Boy, you guys, hi. It's Celine, and it's Tuesday again, 15th of June, 2021. And have I got a report? Which you check in with a couple of things, because I have things. But the first thing that I'm going to try and talk about here is our vibrational state of affairs. So let me pull a card. I'm going to pull a card just in order for me also to get my wits together and get it all organized. Because this should be a pleasant kind of a card that should, come out now at this point. What with all the work that's been done. Good Lord, yes. So I've only slept for about 5 hours or so, which is not normally enough. Same for my husband. And it has been in the works, this process that we have sort of completed, I guess, or that we've made into something else. Great results, just amazing. I sit here to tell you how amazed I am, which is like, I could just go on for half an hour about how amazed I am. And even though I haven't slept really enough and we'd had a lot of stress beforehand and things were, because that's how things tend to go, really. There has been a major shift in the energies and in our lives, really, because of this. So, card, okay, looks like this is my card, and it is the Knight of Swords. Okay, the other one is a Five of Wands. Again, okay, that's fine. Isn't the Five of Wands? Yes, I think so. No, that was the Seven of Wands. Never mind. I am confused at how good things are going. So, this is this tarot deck that I got a month or so ago, 2 months maybe, from France in the mail, and I use it all the time. So, I've got a bag like so, with a Mediterranean suitable kind of cord, and the box goes in there nice and snug, and this more or less comes with me whenever I stay away from the house. I sleep somewhere else. The big deal, a Knight of Swords moment, I suppose it really is. What happened in order for us to know what we're talking about here is that there had been a sort of a changing, disintegrating mood in our house for a couple of days where we felt more and more exhausted. Both my husband and I, if you're new here, maybe you've never, heard me talk. I live alone with my husband, so I am alone during the day. Most of the time, I'm a stay-at-home person. I look after the house and after our, needs in terms of body and spirit, if that's what you want to call that. My husband's in administration, bookkeeping, and he's very busy always, but we do, see each other enough, I think. And a lot of the things that I am noticing that are changing at the moment now have to do with the fact that how our moods, how our vibrational state affects the mood, and the one person's mood is affected by the other's mood or vibrational state even. So it's like it's been really deep. So my husband and I have been together for 34 years. That's a very long time, right? We are both kids of divorced parents. We are very familiar with having to cope with what the world throws at us, you know. Together, always, we are very loyal to each other, support each other as best we can, both ways. And we have our backs, you know, so that's huge and that's very beautiful. And I'm extraordinarily grateful that we have been able to transform the past that we had into the present that we have now. So, because a lot of that was hard work from both sides. So, in order to explain what happened about this whole mood thing and this whole vibrational state thing, I suppose I have to point out a couple of things that have to do with my husband's personal, his past and his state of affairs. He is a womb twin survivor, and that's something that has been, talked about recently in the past 10, 15 years or so. More and more information has been made available to people about this thing. It means, if you don't know what this is, it means that you're actually it means that you have a set of personality traits. All those can be found online, where you are constantly searching, in fact, for your lost twin brother or sister, sometimes plural even, and you are extraordinarily sensitive to also a deep sense of loneliness, and to the fact that nobody around you seems to understand why you feel this way. So there's an extraordinary sense of isolation for those people going on, to the extent that it is really difficult to be married to a womb twin survivor. I should write a manual, which is kind of what I'm doing here. So this is the manual, to the extent that I can actually. I do occasionally write stuff as well, but that's not really, the writing gets done and then that's it, really. So it's massive. It's really massive, and I have been basically really grateful, what with my own personal history, where other things have been at play. I am not one of a set of more than one, twins or triplets or what have you. I have seen the story or the story type of the womb twin survivor come back into our awareness again and again since 2017, when this whole theme sort of blossomed open for us, and I became aware of this information on the internet and started looking at those character traits and their personality traits. It's quite specific and quite practical, the number of types of behavior that those people exhibit and sort of have to deal with themselves, and the people around them have to deal with this phenomenon. As a result, always, decade after decade, it just goes on forever. And it's, I suppose you could interpret it as a curse, it feels often like a curse. It feels like something is just having control over your life in a way that you cannot access it, you cannot change it, you cannot really do anything to influence the way things are going, and that's just not a very great position to be in. However, there's a however to this story. Change is possible, and not so much to sort of imagine that you could actually become not a womb twin survivor anymore. That's not the idea. But to grow beyond it and to understand, finally what it is that has been happening is certainly possible. So I'm going to try and tell you what's been going on here. The other thing that there's a couple of other things, but when I talk nowadays about womb twin survivors, I am reminded again of Inspector Frost, who's been on our telly in the Netherlands recently, on and off all winter. Again, it's ancient TV. It's like the Stone Age, in terms of, which is why people still like watching that stuff, because, it's very sentimental and nostalgic and all that, which I can understand, and I can sort of relate slightly, less and less as time goes by and I have a better life now than I used to back in the 90s, so no thanks. But still, Turns out, when I was looking up the actor David Jason, who plays Frost in those in that series, I noticed, I read on, I think, the Wikipedia page basically, that he lost his twin. I think they were both born alive, and his twin brother passed away very soon afterwards, after the birth. So then, once we'd, picked up this intel, when we were looking at watching the show again, of course, we were on high alert, all antennas out, for the vanished twin syndrome signals right there. And they're all over. It's freaky and very interesting, to watch, to see how this man does his job as an actor and how this role fits him really well and how he actually uses, I suppose, completely unaware of the whole vanished twin business, of the impact of that and the effect of that. I think he's still alive though. I'm not sure, but yeah. So I think he's still alive. But it wouldn't be something that would necessarily, maybe he did know. I don't know. Maybe he did. Maybe it was more easy to acknowledge for him. There's also his birth chart, where I believe he has the moon actually standing on his ascendant. Where I don't remember what it was, which ascendant it was. It's a month ago that I watched that stuff. I was looking it all up at the same time as I was finding out about the womb twin survivor thing with him. However, no matter how he portrays, he's an excellent representation of the womb twin survivor archetype. Just spot on, And of course, he's a male, and for females, it will be slightly different, and there will be other things, but most of it is just utterly relatable. And so I think that's really cool that he has been really popular and done all these shows and done all this work and so on, and kind of made society more accessible already in the 80s and 90s to other kinds of representations of people, more in-depth, more personal, more of the personal struggle that life can be for some people, and certainly the level of isolation and loneliness that comes with the whole vanished twin syndrome thing, which is another phrase for womb twin survivor, really, which I think is just slightly gentler. So we'd been watching a couple of those episodes again over the past month or so, and my TV just records those automatically because I programmed it, and it's just really striking, So there's a background intel bit that not many people know, I think, and if you want to know more about the womb twin survivor effects of on relationships, on how those people interact with others, and how and why, what that looks like and what that feels like, Inspector Frost is actually a really good place to go and look. It may be painful, and that's because it makes sense inside. So back to my husband, okay. In the end of December 2020, we were doing some horoscope charts for ancestors of his, and we discovered that there were not only were there a couple more, so there were twins before my husband, okay, not many, and it wasn't like they're all over and twins surviving together, and then which is of course the most obvious way to become aware of twin energy in your family and twin relationships and so on. It looks like that's a completely different story even when twins actually survive. let alone triplets. I have another footnote here for you. In terms of popular culture, there's a movie that was made, like a documentary kind of a thing, about triplets, young male triplets who grew up separately in different homes in the States, somewhere in the 80s and 90s, I think, or maybe 70s and 80s. It's very popular. I've forgotten the names. I will dig up the link and stick it in the description to this video for you if you want to see. There's a striking difference between in the lives of those three boys. They look a lot alike. They're really, it's very similar. And they find each other in high school, I think, or college, or whatever that is over there, where you are, many of you. I think college, they're like 18 or so, 18, 19 years old, I think, when there is like the first instance of this person meeting one of them and he telling him, I know somebody who looks the spitting image of you. And then those two get together, and then it turns out, after some convolutions and storytelling, that there's a number 3 as well. All goes well for a bit, I think a decade or so. For them, they actually are really happy to be together again. If you look it up, there's also a Wikipedia page for those guys. It turns out that the number 3, whichever age, whether that was an older one or a younger one, I don't know, was actually one of a set of twins. So there were 4, but number 4 didn't make it. And in that kind of a case, what you get is in the pregnancy of those babies, those two were together. They were together, and these two were together in an egg sac in the womb, okay? And those two, they found each other in life. I think they were also the first two to find each other. They've always been happy. They've always done tons of stuff together, tons of things together. They've tried their best to incorporate number 3 in their activities and make him be a part of it. But he didn't make it, and he ended his life, number 3, because he was depressed and miserable, and he just couldn't, be a part of it. Isn't this just so cruel? Where if you know that number 4 was his twin, he was a vanished twin survivor, a womb twin survivor, with 2 twin brothers who were, having their own little twin paradise in actual life, in the body, going on like that. Next to him, right next to him, I'm not surprised. I actually read this, I think also it was on the Wikipedia page. So yay for Wikipedia, because, wow. If I don't put the links in, it's because I forgot. Or because I was lazy and my brain gave up, that's quite possible. So I'm telling you all this to show you again, because I haven't talked about this stuff for a while now. I've done a couple of videos on vanished twin themes and things, and travails and turmoil, and the level of, what you get from all this is the level of searching, the level of attachment of a human being for this twin sibling of theirs that they have to live without. There's an attachment there that is just incredible. It is so strong. Whereas often, as in the case of my husband, the twin was only there for a very short time. Because, when my husband's over 60 years old, at the time his mom was pregnant with him and, his brother or his sibling. There were no ultrasounds made. They didn't have the technology to make pictures of the mother's belly to see what was going on in there, So other relatives, and especially some older relatives or more traditionally oriented relatives, have often a hard time saying, accepting this whole concept. And even though, one of our most traditional relatives in this context has actually, looked at those lists and taken the whole thing seriously enough, where she said that if she filled in a questionnaire, a list of questions for this womb twin survivor character personality description, if she filled in the questions for herself the way she would answer those questions or the way her daughter would answer those questions, she always ended up in the not a womb twin survivor category. And if she imagined, so yay her for, actually doing this, pretty decent of her. If she answered the questions with my husband in mind, who is like her son, what's that? Stepson, She's his father's second wife. So there's lots of divorces also, and also more complications. If she did that, she ended up with a clear yes instantly. So I thought that was really cool of her to actually do that. But it tends to be not easy because you don't have proof other than this thing, where you look at people's behavior and about how they go about things, how they deal with life, how they cope, their specific idiosyncrasies, their ways of being, slightly off the beaten track with a lot of things. You can actually find that in there, and you have to take the time. Somebody has to be willing to take you seriously enough to take the time to look at this type of a questionnaire and sit and go through it and be willing to have an open mind, even if it's only slightly. She still has a hard time accepting the whole idea, but she said a couple of times to us in the past couple of years since 2017 that she just has to, she doesn't really get it, but it's a point. And so, fast forward to January this year, okay? I was doing these horoscopes for these ancestors of his, and there was a whole set of charts, okay? Like, I don't know, 7 or 8 different charts of people. I had looked up, it turns out that there were more children who died, quickly after they were born. So and that's something that happens in everybody's history. If you go back far enough, you will find that the first name of, of a person has actually occurred in that birth records, in those birth archives. You can find that there were other children of the same name who passed away. That's very ordinary. It happens all the time. But there was one child that I had just those charts laying out on the table, just like they're all next to each other, going back to, 1860 or 1870 or so. There was one chart of a boy who passed away after a year and a half. And the next child who got that name actually was my husband's grandfather. Okay, so my husband doesn't descend from this child because he couldn't have. He descends from the other Jan, the other John, if you like. And there was an instant he looked at those charts. My husband doesn't really know that much about astrology, certainly not to interpret things at a glance, He had a very strong reaction, like a sense of connection to that chart and to the chart of the mother of both of those Jans, okay? And the reaction to the mother was actually rather negative. Whole emotional turmoil. It took a couple of weeks in between, sandwiched in between all his busy work activities, for him to come to terms with what was going on here. It turned out that there was a whole lot of emotional energy still alive inside him somehow that had to do with his own father and his grandfather's relationship to his great-grandfather, where his great-grandfather was an actual womb twin survivor. Okay, so 4 generations back. Fast forward, okay, because I've talked about the emotional travails and all the turmoil in, I believe, in January or February. It's been quite a big deal, in this house to get that stuff under control, because you don't want somebody to just go berserk with grief over things that happened 100 years ago, which was more or less what was happening. So, okay. I felt, fast forward to 2 days ago, Sunday, I think, because today's Tuesday, we were already in a state where I always question whether it's me who is having a bit of a burnout moment, or we'd been, I'd been really busy. I've had such fun making candles. I made these in old toilet rolls, cardboard insides of toilet rolls, like that, with wicks, and it needs a bit of tweaking. My tech, the next time I will do this, there will be neater, I suppose. But I also made, a couple of these, like that, and recycling my aluminium bits and pieces. Excellent fun, and they have a bit of patchouli essential oil in them, quite soft and gentle. I could use more next time. And the color is charcoal out of my fireplace with some earth pigments, some ochre, red and yellow, mostly red and a tiny bit of yellow, so that you get this nice, coffee kind of color. It's such nice work to be doing. And the candles actually there's a teeny tiny bit of graveyard dirt in here as well, so it's the total witchy business. Total. So happiness, me happy, okay, doing my thing here, doing my witchy crafty thing, and not having a care in the world with my cards, and I'm total happy. I'm reading Lisa Pepez's Self-Worth Path at installments, during the week. I have got a fabulous new book, which is about ancient, prehistoric goddess figures and figurines and history, going into modern age, divinity, female divinity figures and all that type of stuff. I've got, I don't know, a dozen more. We spent, when was that? Saturday. We went into town where we were for a client run, which is a place where we hadn't actually gone into the center of the town, which is beautiful and great and old. And I got more old books and a book about Kabbalah, and we had a lovely, great pizza together, and with mineral water and tiramisu afterwards. So that was excellent. We just had a whale of a time. Exhausted, but total fun. So Sunday, okay, with what another very big highlight moment is that on Friday evening, before going on a long client run like that, we prefer to always go for a long walk, so that your body looks taken care of. You have your metabolism is reset by going for an hour and a half walk at least in the evening on the Friday, which we did. And coming in an area which I will, hopefully revisit as soon as possible, we found orchids. There's wild orchids blooming close to my house, like 2 kilometers away on foot, in an area that you just really have to know it's there. I'm just hoping and praying that no idiots will come and mow all the herbs and the grasses, because you never know what they're up to with those kinds of places. I still feel like I have to send an email, but I will have to also take a couple of photographs of the orchids. There's 2 kinds of these little spiky plants. They grow about 6 or 7 inches high or so, with like a pointy, like an ear of corn, except they're flowers, in a deep pinky purple, bright, powerful color, and just gorgeous. And they have such great energy. And so we were enjoying all that. It's a new thing. Those orchids I have never seen in that location before. We have lived here for 8 years or 9 years, whatever it is. And I've never seen those in there before. It's fairly rare to see those in the Netherlands. So Please, 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 just let them sit. Don't mess with the ecosystem. Please, because rare orchids, beautiful, wonderful. And there were hundreds of them. They were all over. It's a bit of a marshy country side that it looks like they actually, intended for it to be like a little ecosystem in there, in between the fields, in between the potato fields. So yeah, lots of positive points, okay? Things to be happy about and be content with, and everything's fine. Sunday, a bit of a, meh day because exhausted and just reading and going in the bath. I did do a quite rather massive reorganization of my books that I am super pleased about. So, because we not bought new books as well, I had wanted for quite a while. I'm looking at my books in here. I've got stuff in my living room at the moment that I actually use that I want to be here. And all the other stuff that I don't use or don't care that it has to be right on hand like that is upstairs in my, I suppose, my library annex laundry room, which is also where I do my sewing and sometimes my oil painting. And I've got 3 massive, huge, bookcases that are nearly filled to the brim. But everything's reorganized. So I did that on Sunday. I was happy doing that as well, and really pleased and chuffed with myself that I actually got around to making sense of my book collection, which wasn't really all that obvious because there's so many different subjects and interested in everything and gobble, 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 So that was, it was a bit of a job, but it was in an hour's time or so, it was actually done, more or less. So really chuffed with that. At the end of the day, I was kind of starting to get stressed for some reason. And all day Monday, it was like something felt really weird. And it was like, the closest thing I can describe it for you with is like somebody is constantly poking you in the belly from the side like this, like a constantly and hurting slightly, except it's not in the belly, it's like emotional, something's not right. And I was up to my eyeballs in the self-worth path. I did a whole, spread card business for self-care, which I still think is a really good idea, which I will share with you in a separate video because it's worth it, I did a whole thing where I picked cards for what is my relationship with anger at this moment? What is my form of control? How do I control things? Am I bored? Do I find safety anywhere? What is my safety card? What is my reassurance card? What is my comfort card? Those kinds of things. So you get the idea. The cards that came out were badass. Oh my God. It was the most negative scenario, the whole set. I'd have to look it up how many cards there actually are in my whole spread here. Let me just check that for a second. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 10, 14, 16 cards. So yeah, they're all very consistent with each other. And they showed me where I come from, basically. It's my old mode, okay? So me not so pleased, what with all the work I'd done and all the rest of it. And all the otherwise really good things in my life. And it's nice weather. And what is there to feel this way about? I didn't know. So in the evening, I suppose that I had a disagreement with my husband about something during the afternoon. Yes, that was it. I even have to think back because the vibe is completely different now. So I have to go like, what exactly was it already? Yes, that was it. He was all over the place. He tends to get excited, about things, and he gets kind of out of control in a way, and he calls me up to tell me that he's tried something and it didn't work. if you know what I mean, where I go like, yes, and so what do you want me to do about this? I can't do anything. It's just a status quo. This is just a state of affairs. Turns out that it was kind of symptomatic for him of a state that he was in, only because he's distracted by his work and by the way things are going in the office and the things he has to do for everybody, up until 7 in the evening or so, because they do a bit of overtime, nearly always on Mondays. He just wasn't noticing that much. He just tends to go like, okay, so I get excited, I get carried away, and that was it basically. He doesn't really notice that he's not happy and that he's not relaxed and he's not jiving, he doesn't get the mojo. So we tried to talk in the evening a bit more, and both of us are exhausted, and finally go to bed and sleep for like half an hour or so. And I'm still so tense and so like you're cursed. Like there's this sense of a curse again, the sense of a doom that's just crushing you down, and it's impossible to just feel confident, feel alive, feel capable. None of that. And I could feel it was coming from him. And he had himself talked about his dad, about how the sort of a sense that he had inside him really went back decades in his own life this time, back to seeing his parents interact when he was like 10 or 11 years old, and the way that went, and that he'd kind of identified with his dad to some extent, which was something that we really knew. But his new intel at that time, at that moment, was that his dad had actually taken it out on his kids in a subtle way by ignoring them and just paying no more attention to both of those kids, him and his brother, his older brother, because their mum made herself less and less available to her husband at the time. So this was because he himself, my husband himself, told me this. That was sort of the little hook, the attachment point where everything was sort of, this was what it was like. This was becoming visible, okay? So having had completely enough of that, around 11 o'clock or something in the night, I had completely enough of of feeling this tense, and I was like this lying in my bed. I was trying to, I mean, my husband and I share a bed, okay? So you're lying like this much apart, and I was going nuts. It was driving me bonkers. And he was asleep, most of the time, but he was, kind of fidgety and not really quiet and not really relaxed enough. So I went in there with white light because I'd I'd had enough. And it's the remedy when all else fails, when the crazy just doesn't seem to want to end. White light will always bring change, some kind of change, anything, just get the hell in there and do something. Anything's better than this. And I just did like a 5 centimeter session of that, and immediately I could see an energy form protruding from my husband's body. He was lying right here next to me at that time. So we were having contact. It was physically okay. We're kind of comfortable like that with our new mattresses. We've got new mattresses. They're awesome. I recommend going and getting new mattresses if that's in your life, you know, if you need those. Better sooner than later. Anyway, parentheses. My husband resting more or less comfortably. White light goes in there, and I see like an arm, actually a grey shape of a long arm sticking out of the side of him almost, except it's in my mind's eye. Very clear and very obvious. And I go like, okay, whew, that's very obviously not your energy. That's your dad's energy. There you have it. Okay. It was inside him, and it was like a whole articulated tentacle kind of a form, dark grey. So I asked him, he was awake. You know, I'm doing this, and this white light is showing me this shape, and it belongs to your dad. Do you want this energy to go outside, to go from you? Do you want this energy to leave you? Yes, he said instantly. I said, okay. You always have to ask the person. It's politeness, you know? And because of the change in the life that is going to happen to the person, it's best if they actually know that something's happening to them. So you want to inform them. It's common, you know, decency. So, okay, onwards with white light in there, drawing this whole creature, person, entity, whatever it was, out. And I was hesitating. It was just sitting in this white light space, I suppose, next to us. After a while, there's a whole trail of information that belongs to it going down into my husband's body, into his earth line, into the past. And I'm wondering, like, okay, so this isn't really, it's not a person, it's a pattern. So I don't really know exactly how to connect this to the white light, to the light at the end of the tunnel, you know, because normally if there's a living person or somebody who's passed away, or an animal even, that I've done this type of thing for, you connect in your emotion with the person, with the animal, with whatever it is. They're alive, they have a striving, they have a need. You sort of show them the light, and ideally you get a making of contact somehow where there's actually something in the light for them, you know, something that they can connect to. And you just give them a little bit of a shove in that direction, and off they go. There has to be intention. There has to be need and or intention. And that creates this, you can just, do a bit of this and a bit of that, and then in terms of this energy field, it'll just do it for you, and they can leave, and they can actually, and the whole place changes. But for this energy shape, it was like like I said, a curse. It was like a residue of a ton of behaviors, of a ton of attitudes and memories upon memories, endless going back in time. So what happened, funnily enough, now I remember actually what it was exactly that happened. In the white light space, after a little while, this form that I had sort of collected with the white light out of my husband's body, it crumbled. It broke into pieces and crumbled, and the dust and the fragments just went up into the light like that. So there was no need and or intentionality or any of it. There was no real consciousness, but it still needed to be broken. And the white light actually does that. If you just let it, if you just focus on it and let it do its thing, it'll, crunch, and then it goes like that. So I thought that was kind of interesting as well. Afterwards, there's still this whole tail, this huge long grey tail of events going up out of the earth. And there were several different individual human people attached to this cord in a way, was like a braid almost of more less alive than this, but gray fiber going down a couple of centuries into the earth, into the past. And there were, like I said, there were a couple of people attached, like bright nodes, where people had been at several, I don't know, 5 or 6 or so at least. And there was one specific one. I have no clue who that was, except that it goes back to the 1700s. A deep ancestor of theirs, a very bad energy, very ew, very ew. And the white light just went in all the way around, all the way, pulling them out, because my husband was no longer an anchor for those energies. He was free of those, okay? So it was a matter of just keeping going like that for a bit. And the white light does the rest, as long as I stay in my focus, and I don't do anything at that time. I'm not going like this with my hands in the bed, in the middle of the night. I'm just still lying there, but I have a total focus, because I know what's happening, and I can feel it in my gut. My gut right here tells me what's going on. So, and it's very consistent, and it's always been like this. And so far, I would still always believe that everybody's, that I'm nuts and this is just weird and just more of my weird stuff, We managed to extricate this last 1700 weirdo character also, and get him to, go back up. And the white light went up and down his earth line a couple of times. So everything's fine now. After that, there was at least an hour and a half of restlessness for both of us. We were both bouncing off the walls, couldn't sleep. Went back downstairs, my husband to finally sit on the couch and read for a bit. And I think it was by 1 o'clock or so, which is really late for us. I have not seen 1 o'clock, okay? So I was asleep by then. And my husband go back to bed and slept as well. And he can deal better with sleeping late. He's a bit groggy, but it's not that bad at all. And I talked to him on the phone just now, and he feels the same as I do. He feels liberated. And that's, of course, the final clinching and the proof of the pudding of this whole story, is that there's actually an afterwards, okay, where total openness. Suddenly you have like 3 miles more space to breathe. And that's the proof that actually something actually happened. Something really, really happened. There was actually a factor, a vibrational, personal, psycho-spiritual, whatever you want to call it, factor that kept him prisoner. And because he was prisoner, so was I. I've been married to this guy for 34 years. 3.5 decades. And I have not known this amount of free space ever. I enjoy it no end. I was sitting outside under my fig tree with my coffee earlier and my pussycat and my book, and I was just like swimming in this beautiful summer space, going like, oh my God, this is what the life is supposed to be about. This is life, not the other thing. Not all those problematic cards and those limitations. And I suppose there was a point, I was learning. I was learning the discipline, and boy, I was having a hard time. So there you go. That was the massive big deal. Again, I have done videos like this before where there was such a, this kind of a healing event happening. And I also noticed that doing tumo in these kinds of conditions before the actual healing phase is possible, but nearly painful, because your vibes aren't you're not open really to the Shakti either. It's there, but it just doesn't feel really good, and you cannot use tumo even to make yourself feel any better at that type of point. So yeah. So I think that's wow, 50 minutes. That's enough, don't you think? Thank you so much for you guys for doing this with me. And off to the bath I am. Okay, with probably with this again. So get back to basics. Thank you for watching, and I will be seeing you next time. I will be doing like a Tumo little techniques update on Thursday instead of a proper lesson. I have been thinking even of just stopping all lesson activity until the end of August, because people are not gonna be around, and I don't want you to miss out on this stuff because you're not there or because you want to do something else. It's summertime. Go ahead and enjoy yourselves, okay? Because I will. I am certainly going to enjoy my summer. Much better after all this. See you next time? Okay. See you then. Bye-bye. Thank you.